Welcome back to Let's Clone. My name would be Toast, and this is part 4 of balloon fights. Gonna change up some of the code that we did before. Won't be too bad, but we're going to we're gonna create a parent object for the player, and then we're gonna make player 1 and player 2 children of that object. We are going to add in the player collisions with one another so they can pop each other's balloons, collect some scores, and that'll be just about it. I think there'll be one more part after this, and then we will be all finished up with the balloon fights versus clone thing. Yeah, let's go. Okay, so first up, we're going to come into our objects. We're going to actually delete player 2. We're going to open up player 1. Get rid of a sprite here, just so we don't get confused with everything. I'm going to get rid of the object. This is just a parent, so pull my sleeves. Yeah, so that's all we want. We're gonna add I guess we'll add these things now. So I'm gonna add an alarm 0. We haven't made the variable for this yet, but we will. All I'm going to do is say vulnerable is equal to true. Vulnerable. Yeah, I think that's correct. I'm gonna close that, go into our create event. Oh shoot. It should be fine. So here, I guess we can name this combat variables, in which we are going to have a player variable. It's going to identify which of the children we are. Enemy is equal to, we're just going to name it for object player 2, although again this will be switched around when we are player 2, so we can know who we are not. Vulnerable is equal to true. That's when we just set in the alarm. iframes is equal to 30, meaning that for half a second after we get hit, we will not be vulnerable. So you can't like just pop 2 balloons at once. And then points is equal to 0. I like to use points over score. Score is a variable that GameMaker already has, so it shows up green. It just looks different than the variables I've made, so I don't know. I want it to be my variable, not theirs. So yeah, that's all we need to change, I do believe, in this. That seems about right. Now we're going to create 2 objects. We're going to have our object for our player 1. Just like I said in the last part, it doesn't matter if they have an initial sprite, but just so I can see the difference, I'm going to give him, I thought I clicked on that, oops. I'm going to give this guy a 1 balloon sprite for player 1, a 2 balloon sprite for player 2, just so it looks better. Parents is our player object. That is all we need for player 1. We're going to duplicate that guy, give him a player 2. Going to give him, again, just so I can see easily on the screen who is who, just a 2 balloon. And then we are going to right click on create and inherit event. You could have just created a create event and typed in event inherited. That just means that it'll pull everything from the parent object's create. Oh, okay. That's not, I guess I already closed it. It'll pull everything from the parent object's create event, and then it'll write all of this on top of it. So we just kind of want to overwrite a couple variables. That one being player is now equal to 2, and enemy is equal to object player 1. Now, one other thing that I actually forgot to write in my notes, but I know we need to do, is come into our scripts, our player input. We're going to give this a parameter. It is a real number, player number, I guess. This is interesting. I did not update this file yet, but it's already written in here. So that's confusing me. Oh, I must have done this and then realized I was in the wrong file, so I went over to the main one and changed it. But yeah, this is what we want. Argument 0, we're going to pass it a number, and we're going to say for player 1, he's going to use, I actually want to switch this around. For player 1, we're going to use WASDA to move. So changing the VK right up and left with a ORD, DW, and A, make sure these numbers are capitalized. That is just going to get the key for the keyboard press. So our left hand, if we're playing by ourselves for testing purposes, it's the only reason I'm doing this, is WASD for the guy on the left and arrows for the guy on the right. You don't have to keep it that way if you don't want to. And yeah, now in our player object, let's see how far I must have gone with this. Okay, I've already changed this to then. Player input 1, I actually don't want to say that, I want it to be player. So again, if we have set it to player 1 or if we haven't changed it, then player 1 will call this script and it'll pass the number 1. Player 2 will pass the number 2 and they will get the correct input as accordingly, I guess, sure. Now did I? All right, cool. I was worried that I had already written out all of the code, but I did not, so we are all set. Well, let's actually go into the map first. Our room, we only have one of these guys left because I deleted player 2. Yeah, so we don't want the parent player, we want a player 1 and we want a player 2. It doesn't matter if they're centered or not, but I will do it anyways. And let's close that. Let's play just to see if there's anything that I broke. Right now they shouldn't be able to interact with one another at all. They should walk right through each other. Can't pop balloons. It's kind of just back to where we had it before. Okay, but we do need to change or update, so this guy is now painted blue again. I actually meant to keep that bit of code for before deleting player 2, but we'll just rewrite it. So in our draw event, this is where we need to pretty much pay attention to what player we are. So we're going to say if player is equal to 2. We can keep it as it was for player 1 because I don't know, everything will just run as it was. We're going to say shader set. We're going to give it the shader. Whoa, let's go inside of our parentheses. The shader swap red and blue. And then we'll come down here to after. If we are player 2, go up 1. We don't need to call anything, and we're going to do shader reset. So now only if it's player 2 are we going to initialize the script that we need. We're going to draw ourselves and our sprites, and then if only if it's player 2 do we need to reset. Play that again just so we can see that everything is working right. Come on. Yep. All right. So we've got our blue number 2 and our red number 1. See that we're still poking over, and yep, everything is still good. But as you can see, we just run right through each other. No combat, nothing yet. Now the rest of the code will be done just in the player object. So if I have anything else open, I can close that and close that. Good. So just in our player object, and it'll all be done in our step event. The first thing I want to do is I want to update our bounce collision so we can bounce off of each other. I might end up throwing a little tidbit in the next part where I tweak this a little bit because it's not perfect, but it does get the point across. We want to add a condition where we can either bounce off of the grass objects as we have been, but we do want to pay attention to one other potential. So here we're going to put a parentheses over these two statements. So all I've added was a soft bracket over each one. And then here we're going to tab over and do a logical OR and do a place meeting at x plus, we're going to give it the sign of horizontal speed, y enemy. What that'll do for us is it'll give us our bounce collision if we are not on the ground and we are hitting a grass object. And then it will also give us the same bounce effect if we are, doesn't matter if we're on the ground or not, but we're bumping into the player. Then it doesn't matter if we actually collide with the player because this will throw us away from the player anyways. So there were a couple instances where I could force it to overlap. For the most part, it wasn't a problem, but again, if I tweak anything, I'll adjust that too. And everything else will happen just above this. So I'm putting it after flying and before the collision bounce. Nope, combat code, sure. Now we want to grab an instance of the enemy object. So we want to be overlapping the enemy, grab an instance of it so we can check its variables and conditions and see what we want to do and how we're going to pop its balloons. So I'm going to say variable NME is equal to instance position x, y, enemy. And what that does is instance position or instance place is a lot like creating a place meeting or a position meeting, but we're storing the object that we are colliding with into the variable NME. What position does rather than place is if we come up to our sprite player, doesn't matter which one, we have our origin point. They should all be set to bottom center. Position meeting only looks at this pixel. It'll check if this position of our sprite is overlapping whatever collision mask we're trying to compare it to. Whereas place meeting would look at the entire mask and check if that mask is overlapping with the mask that we're comparing it to. But here we are checking we're creating that. I didn't need these yet. Get that semicolon in there. So we're going to check that if enemy is not equal to no one, because this is running all the time checking if we're colliding. If we're not colliding, then enemy will be set to no one because there's no collision happening at instance position. We're going to check that and enemy dot is alive. We don't want to be able to collide off of him if he's in his death animation. See where I am. Cool, so we know that we are touching the enemy player and we know that the enemy player is alive. So we're going to say with the enemy. Right away we're going to set his vulnerable equal to false. This means that he's not going to be able to take any more damage for the next half a second or for 30 frames. And we need to trigger that vulnerability to come back at alarm 0 is equal to I frames. Now, let me see, this should vulnerable. I wonder if I should check if he's vulnerable here. It was working before, so if anything doesn't work, I'll fix it. We would like to bounce off, or no, we're actually not going to bounce. We're going to kind of like a knockback, but bump down. Sure. We're going to say VSP is equal to negative, the fly speed. So we're going to take the player that's getting hit and we're going to, at the same height that he would be able to jump, we're just going to knock him down that much. And if you're above the ground, this is why we've run this code above the collision, is we're going to change the VSP, but we're not going to be able to force the player down through the ground because the collision code is still coming up right after. Now we're going to pop, enemy balloon. We're going to say that number, remember that we are inside of the overlapping object, inside of the enemy. So number balloons, we're going to make it equal to the maximum between two values. The maximum between 0 and num balloons minus 1. So even if number balloons is at 0, it'll then check whatever the maximum value between 0 and -1 is, so we can't go below -1. That's, you probably saw in the last part we had an issue where we were popping out of that's why we changed this to default, because we were popping out of case 0 because I was hitting space too many times and I was setting ourselves to have a negative number of balloons. This is just another fix for that. So we could turn that default back into a case 0, but it doesn't make a difference. Now, we need to check that, check for death, I guess. We're going to say if number balloons is equal to 0, and we're going to award the victorious player in this collision with some points. So we're going to go to other dot points plus plus. Now it's a little bit weird to think of, so try to follow along if it's, now when you understand it, it's simple, but I had a hard time kind of following this train of thought when I was first learning about others and all of this stuff. So here we are in the player itself. Say where player 1 is attacking player 2. We are in player 1 and we are getting a reference to player 2. Now by saying with enemy, we are now inside of player 2, but we want to give the points back to player 1. So by saying other, we are now popping outside of player 2 and back into player 1 and incrementing his points by 1. So it's a little bit flip-floppy. There's what I love about coding is there's so many ways you can do just about everything. This is just one of them. And it compiles, so it's fine. But we actually we could kind of put these two statements together, but I wanted to break them up conceptually because we're going to do just about the same thing by making the player now, the attacking player, bounce up instead, like whereas the one getting hit is going to bounce down, player 1 would now bounce off of player 2 vertically. So we're going to say bounce attacking player. But this, we're going to do the same thing, just in you know what, we're not going to do that. I was going to put it inside of a with other, but there's no need. We're just going to say other.vsp is equal to 2 times f the jump speed or jump height. Doesn't matter if we call other or not on FSP. What are you yelling at me about? Unassigned variable. Oh. Wait. What did I call it? My create? The fly speed. FL speed. That would have been an oopsie. Oops. No. And then here as well. Sorry for the confusion. It doesn't matter if we call other or not because they both have the same FL speed since it's just pointing to whatever the parent object's information is. So we can call other there or not. It doesn't make much of a difference. Well, damn. That might be everything. Yeah, let's play that a bit. Let's should we be drawing something? Yeah, we'll stylize or do something with the score later on, but let's really quickly do this. We're going to put some parentheses around this. We're going to say variable draw x is equal to 32, and then inside of player 2, this all makes sense in a second, draw x is equal to room with minus draw x. And then we're going to draw set horizontal alignment to be FA center. We're going to draw set color to be red. Oops. Now I tried getting this to work just with our shader, so it would only draw it red if it's a player 1 and blue if it's player 2. But there's some trickiness going on with drawing text and the colors that are associated with it. So we're just going to force this to be a blue. And then after all of the shader draw is done, then we're going to draw the score. So draw text. We're going to say at draw. Did my game? Look at this. Look at this. All right. GameMaker froze. You're kidding me. Fuck. Everything. Everything got erased. Because, I've got to type all that out again. Okay, I'm not going to make you guys sit through it. I'm just going to go ahead and catch up to everything we just did. Okay, now we should be all caught up. Draw text. Add our draw x. We're going to... we'll just come down 32 for the draw y. It's just going to put it in the top left corner for player 1, top right corner for player 2. And then we're going to draw the text of points. Nothing fancy. This is just letting us know that the numbers are incrementing as we get a kill. Okay, I didn't comment this time around, but I think I got everything typed back in. Let's give it another shot. GameMaker. Or rather, this laptop. Okay. So we have this terribly drawn things again. We're going to bounce off of the player. This player bounce off of this player. If we run up and fly, we bounce off of each other. But if I come up, gotta come up a little bit higher. We pop. Ooh, see what I did there? Truel. Yep, that'll do it. Come into. I wonder how many of you guys caught this. I wrote Truel. That's always fun. Now that bounce speed was a little bit much. I might want to just change that not to 2 of the flight speed. But come up. Yeah, I'm gonna lower that, but here we can get a kill. It's a little bit tricky. These controls aren't great. Good. We can bounce, we can get kills. See, right there we have a little bit of a collision, or an overlapping collision, so that was kind of tricky. Come on. Good. So there's that. Let me change, where was it? Step. Oops. The vertical bounce. Let's get rid of that 2. Then here, so that this is probably why I had the overlap and you guys didn't, or you guys might not in this spot. I forgot to do the -12 when I had to rewrite everything. Now, what that does here is when I want to check for a bounce, I actually take my player's collision mask and I move it up 12 pixels first. And this is going to make it easier for me to, let's see how, let's go into the room. So pretty much if we have player 1, player 2's coming up, he could hit it and he'd bounce back, hit it and he'd bounce back. But what I'm checking for is I'm not checking the collision right where the player is. So imagine the player stays here, but I throw his mask up a bit. And I'm saying if I hit it, I'm going to bounce back. That way when I'm roughly around here, like, all right, so imagine player 2 is here, and the collision mask of player 2 is placed 12 pixels higher. It's going to allow him to not bounce off anymore, and it's going to allow him to move over, which is going to allow for the instance position to trigger around the balloons. Another way to do this that I probably should have done would be to render the players and the balloons as separate objects and just tie them together so the balloons always follow the player. So the balloons had their own collision mask that I could deal with. That would have been smarter. I considered doing that, but for some reason I didn't. So that's what the -12 does, and that will give us a better result as far as the bouncing around goes. And all right, so he still pops. Yeah, that bounce feels a little bit better. Spawn camping. But yeah, we have the ability to pop balloons, the ability to get points. The reason that this has shifted over so much more is that since we've zoomed in with the use of our view, we've doubled the size of all the pixels. When I did room width -32, you could think of it as it doing that code twice, so it moves it over 64 instead. But I'll clean up the score, figure out how I want to do it. I don't know if the counter is going to go up or if you're going to have a set of lives and then we're going to take those away. But we'll figure that out in the next part. Aside from GameMaker crashing on me, as it tends to do, this one should have been pretty quick. Yeah, like I said, the next part will clean up the score quite a bit, and then all we have left to add is the water and the fish. If you're not familiar with it, the fish, if you get too close to the water, or if you fly into the water, you die. If you get too close to the water, the fish will come up and snatch you out of the air. What I'm going to do is if you die via water or fish, your score will go down 1. So if we do a life-based system, then you're going to lose one of your own lives, or you're just going to lose one of your top score. Depends on how I feel like doing it when I get around to recording it. But that'll be it for this part. Part 4 of balloon fights is now in the books. I'm trying to cram all these together. I'm flying out to Colorado actually tomorrow night, and I've already got the first 2 or 3 videos uploaded and on schedule. So we're way ahead of ourselves on this one. Thank you for watching.